So this is what we're going to use. Good old Farrier's rasp. This is a hella legend. Quite wide, relatively thin. I'm just going to roughly cut it out with the plasma cutter. You could just do it with a grinding disc or just beat it, but I'm just wanting to make this a very quick build. I can figure out the best way to cut it. Right, so that's the basic shape that we're starting with. Hopefully it won't look quite that bad by the time I've finished with it. So I'm just going to try and taper it slightly towards the point. I want to keep as much width as I can near the back, near the handle, and just taper it down a bit at the point. Now I could have just, I suppose, ground all this, but it's an awful lot of grinding. I just find it, because I've got the forge here, much easier just to get it hot and give it some beans. I'm going to thin it out, which will hopefully widen it slightly, and taper it. That's basically the aim of the forge work today. This is one thing I didn't do on, or do much of, on my previous knife builds or kitchen knife builds, and they turned out a bit thick. That's why I'm trying to thin this one out a bit more. You can see there it's like starting to taper. All the time trying to thin it, which will be drawing it out a bit wider. Try and keep the spine fairly level. I'll have to work on that next. It's getting there. Just doing this saves an awful lot of grinding, that's all. You can see, I think, how much it's widened. I suppose I should have measured it actually, see what the original rasp was and what it turned out at. I think I'm going to call it a day at that for the blade. Just going to tidy this handle up a little bit. Get rid of some of that, those teeth, flatten them right down. I'm just going to slightly kink the handle up as well, just a little bit, just so it's not quite as parallel as it was with the spine of the blade. I'm tapering that a little bit as well down towards the blade. Not much, just a gnat's. think that'll do it. So I'm going to leave it there exactly where it is, let that cool down, and that'll anneal it enough for me to grind it. So I'm just going to start with a 36 grit belt, and I'm just taking off the remnants of the teeth. On previous knives I've used rasps for, I haven't done that, and when you end up getting it down to sharpen it, you get all these jagged little edges, so I'm making sure that I get rid of all of those. The teeth that were along the edge of the rasp. I think they've just about gone now. If you don't get rid of them all, when you get it thin enough to get an edge on it, they're still there. They're sort of, they go further into the blade than you think. And I'm just going to just tidy the whole thing up all the way around, basically, before we get on to some serious stock removal. Radius the end of it, make it look pretty. Ow, that was hot. Right, so I think that's sort of tidied up all the edges. That is still hot. Now we can actually start on the meat of the job. I think I'm going to have to change this blade, or this belt. This is an old one, and it doesn't seem to be tearing as much off as it should be. This is one tool, the belt grinder, that I built thinking I wouldn't use very much. Like a lot of the tools I build, I use it so much. It's one of the best tools I've ever made. Really pleased with that. You have to be careful what belts you buy. You can buy some real old rubbish, and they have such a join in them that you can't do something like this because the edge catches on it and just tears the belt in half. So you need to buy decent belts. Right, I'm going to swap it because it's not tearing much off. Let's put a new one on there. There we go. Let's see how this one performs. Track it. That feels better. Yeah, that's tearing it off much better. Now I'm just thinning the whole blade down fairly universally, or no, uniformly, that's the word I was looking for. I'm not sort of tapering it down towards the cutting edge. Well, not much. I'm trying to hold it that way if it will go, but basically I'm just thinning the whole thing down so we get quite a nice delicate blade. So let's just swap to a finer grit. Now this one is, I think, 240. I think this is a 240 grit, which from 36 is quite a bit of difference. I'm just going to take most of the lines out. And then we shall try and actually put a bit of a taper on it. It's actually coming up quite nice, quite pleased with that. Right, I'm going to try my bevel jig that I made in a previous video. I had intended on buying a bigger piece of plate to put on the table here to make it easier to run it backwards and forwards, but I haven't got round to that yet, so I'm having to be a bit careful. But it's working. There's a bit of a problem on both sides at one point. I don't know if it's thinner or thicker, but it's putting a funny shape on both sides. But I'm sure we'll get over it. It's not brilliant, but it's a damn sight better than doing it freehand. That's for sure. And as this is the first time I've ever used it since I built it, I dare say I will get the hang of it. Coming up quite nice. Surprised myself. Well, I think we're almost going to call it a day at that, and then get it heat treated before we put the final touches to it. It's not bad at all, quite pleased. Oh no. Another little tickle. Just a final burst. That'll do. So, I'm just going to harden it now. I normally harden the whole thing when I do these, but I've seen an awful lot of people who don't. They just literally harden the blade part rather than the handle as well. And some people don't even do the whole blade. They just do sort of like from halfway up on the cutting edge. So I'm just going to try just hardening the blade and see what happens. As most of you will know, I'm not a bladesmith. I'm just an old blacksmith. So whatever I do is all trial and error. That's just in the oil, just cooling that out. I'm just going to burn some of the oil off. It's a bugger, it goes everywhere. So getting the worst of it off. Right, so this is what it looks like after it's come out of the oil. Black as you're at. mucky, so I'm just going to quickly shine that up a little bit. Bit of rough grit paper, just take that off so I can see to temper it. Now I'm going to do it with the torch. You know, several of you have seen me do this before. I have done them in the oven before, but I really cannot be bothered today. I just want to get it done rather than stick it in an oven for 2 hours. And I'm actually going to cock it up completely. Got it too hot in too many places, but I'm going to call it a day at that. I'm not mucking about. This is a quick build. It's only for my own personal use. You can see, look at that, got every colour under the sun there. But I'm going to call it at that. If it'll put an edge on it, then that'll do me. So let's clean her up again. See if we can get an edge on it. So now I'm gone even finer with the grit. I think I'm down to 400 now, I think it is, on this one. So I'm just taking all that nasty blackness off. Basically redoing all the stuff we've done before. Now this is it's a bit, I don't know what these wheels are. If you go into my Amazon page, you'll see these on there. They're a brilliant wheel. They're like a bit like a Scotch-Brite wheel, but a bit harder. And this one's 180 grit. I think it's 180 grit. It might not be quite that coarse, but it leaves a nice satin finish. So I use these a hell of a lot. It's a lovely satin finish. Now I'm just going to put my polishing mop on. Now I've got it fairly uniform and got all the grinding lines out. And now I don't like highly polished knives, so I'm just going to put somewhere in between, a bit more than satin, but not quite mirror. Just about there, I think. That'll do for me. Right, see if we can get an edge on it. So I've just got the whetstone there, or oil stone. Let's see if we can sharpen it. It's coming, slowly but surely. We're getting there. So I've got it finished. It's not high polish because I don't actually like a high polish. It shows the marks too much, but it's a decent finish. Most of the marks of the file have gone. There is still a little bit of sort of lines there, but very few. Same the other side. I'm quite pleased with it overall. It's the better one of the three that I've made. I don't know if it's the shape. I think this is, I'm not sure if this is a Japanese style. I don't know. I'm not a knife maker, you know that. But I like the shape. It's much lighter. I can't really see, but I've thinned that down much more than my previous knives, which were so heavy. This one is much lighter, much more manoeuvrable. Really like it. And it came up reasonably sharp, even though I completely ballsed up the tempering. It's got a good edge on it. How long it will last I don't know, but so far, let's have a little look. is quite good. It's not bad for me. My knives never come up particularly sharp, but that one's pretty good, and as it's only going to be a kitchen knife, yeah, pleased with that. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Very quick build. If you can get your whole hands on any of these Farriers rasps, they make lovely knives. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.